Check one, two, three. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. Before we get started, I wanted to mention our sponsor for this episode, FloridaSoundman.com. One of our past guests, Joe Giannotti, production sound mixer, has created the Quiet Please Filming in Progress sign. You've probably seen it. It's a 24-inch by 36-inch collapsible sign, and now he has the lav organizer, and it holds up to 5 lavalier microphones in a compact pouch. So visit the product page at FloridaSoundman.com to check out the products, and use promo code LSP for a 10% discount. That's FloridaSoundman.com. Okay, my guest today is a production sound mixer based out of St. Albans in the UK, just north of London. Please welcome Judi Lee-Headman.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Judi. Thanks for being on the podcast.
You're very welcome.
Okay, you're based in the UK, so we've just had this big COVID-19 quarantining, sheltering in place. So what has been your experience?
Okay, so I've been up until lockdown, I've been incredibly busy just going from one production to the next. Just before COVID really got started, I was in week 3 of my latest job. It was going quite well. You know, we heard something about a virus somewhere over there, but it wasn't something that we thought would impact us. Who knew? And so, cutting a very long story short, we were shut down on March 13th, and we have been waiting to hear since then when we're going to start again. And of course, there have been very many versions of safe set protocols being issued, and like that, what we should do, So some of the protocols have made sense, and some of them have just been downright silly. So I'm looking forward to getting back. It's going to be a different world in the sense of, I think, more for script writers and people like that than the sound department, because certainly my department, we were always very hygiene savvy. Just because headphones and mics are such invasive bits of kit, you don't put dirty stuff on artists. You don't give people dirty headphones. It just makes sense.
That is true. Now personally, what's your life been like? Have you just been staying home?
Yeah, it's been great. Because, as I said, where are we now? This is 2020. So I would say from around 2017, I've probably been at home for 4 days in a row. I don't know, maybe every couple of months. I mean, one job I was away from home for 6 months. I'd come back home at weekends and then back up again, commute if you like. But this has been quite nice to reacquaint myself with my family and my dog. This is pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, it is weird, but I think it's the right thing to do because it's just too dangerous to try and, cut corners and say, yeah, we can get around it. And I think what's going to be interesting from this is that a lot of the productions that try to cut corners on safety in terms of working long hours, less crew than's needed, all of the things that we professionals groan about, because every time we talk to the producer, we haven't got money for that. They now know that if they try to circumvent the guidelines that are coming in, it can have fatal consequences. Not that some of them didn't before, but this is now for sure. So I think that's going to be the change.
Yes, I agree. You know, a lot of productions are going back on set now here in Florida, and I know around the country and the world. Yeah, and
Hmm.
it's going to be, there are going to be a lot of changes, and I know I've talked with some people. They're frustrated about wearing a mask. They don't feel like they can breathe very well and do their job very well. But we need to think about those things.
I think what you need to think about is not so much you, but the other. So you may be perfectly fit, you're a 27-year-old fit, super strong thing, and then maybe an actor, late 60s, early 70s on set. You bounce on set doing whatever it is you're doing, and you put that person's life at risk. They may not be, it's not, I don't think the industry is going to say, okay, right, we don't hire artists over the age of X because of the risk. That doesn't make any sense. So it's in our interest to protect them. So if you as a crew member feel like, oh, I don't want to wear a mask, you're being incredibly selfish.
We're going to have to work through it for sure.
For sure. I mean, it's a new paradigm. This is something that if you could see it, say, with spots, like some measles or something like that, okay, that person's got it, get them off set. We don't know now. So we can't take chances until such time as there's some kind of vaccine, and that opens up another can of worms altogether. Until there's some sort of preventative therapy, whatever that may be, we can't take chances.
Well, let's jump in a little bit here and talk about when you're working as a production sound mixer on set. Tell us about what's in your audio kit. So kind of give us a rundown of your mixer and recorder, preferred mics that you like to use, and everything in between.
Okay, well, I'm a die-hearted sound devices lady. I have been using sound devices for a very long time. I love it. It's a very solid bit of kit, and I've been using one for a very long time. So I have a sort of kit that I throw in the back of a car if I need to, which is the trusty old 7A8. It's bulletproof. And if I need to drop a bag somewhere with a couple of mics running in there, I will throw that in the back of a truck or whatever, if we're doing car-to-car stuff. On my car is, again, sound devices. So I have a 6A8 CL12. I use Wizys. I've been a fan of Wizys for a while. I got involved with those when I had to do a job abroad, and I used them, and I just found the range incredible. And the fact that you can get the way that the frequencies are allocated on there, you can pretty much go anywhere and get some sort of signal. So Wizys, on my mics, I have Sankens on the Wizzy. So I use COS-11s for the lavs, as you guys call them. And then I have CMITs and Sennheisers. So indoors, I'll use Sennheiser 40s and 50s and 8040s. I'll also use, for outside, I might use a Sennheiser 60, MK60, or I may use a CMIT5u. So that's pretty much my kit. It's a kit that's tried and tested and works in most situations. So if it's very cold, very hot, I know that kit works. So that's it. And then I have tracer batteries on the bottom, 480 watt-hour batteries that sort of get me a day quite happily, so I can rock up anywhere and not really worry the electricians for any kind of mains at all.
Okay. What brand of battery is that again? It's
called a tracer. I don't know if it's available in the States. It's a brand I found a couple of years ago, and they're super, super reliable. It's one of those things. We just get on set wherever we're at, just rock up, and we're good to go. I've got Blackmagic Duo monitors and a remote audio speakeasy pair of speakers just for local monitoring, or if I want to give my head a break from headphones, because I'm quite strict on myself with the headphones, because if you have your headphones on, I imagine for 10, 12 hours a day, you get home and your ears are tired. So I tend, if we're not shooting at that moment and, they're blocking on set, I'll just pop the headphones off, run my speakeasy, and just listen that way, just to give my ears a break. So that's basically what I use, yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that here in the U.S. we call them lav mics. What do you call it in the U.K.?
We just call them radio mics, really. The first time, I've worked with Americans quite a few times, and the first time I worked with them, they said, have you got lavs? And I'm thinking, why are they asking me about the toilet? Because the lav in the UK is a slang word, is toilet, the John. So yeah, I mean, it's short for lavalier. I know that, but it was just odd to hear it used in that way.
Yes. Yeah, usually you'll find people, it's like they'll call the actual mic a lav, and then but yeah, sometimes refer to everything as a lavalier or, wireless or whatever. So yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, it's just basically what it. I know it's a shorthand for you're going to put a personal mic on that person. You're going to put a mic on that person's body. So it's a lav, radio mic, whatever. It's just a go-to word for that bit of kit.
Well, what kind of timecode boxes do you like to use?
I use Ambient MasterLockits, and then mini Lockits on my cameras. And then I've got some nanos. Again, the nanos go on my small recorder. So if I have to drop a recorder into something, again, like, the car or something like that, I'll probably piggyback a ambient nano on that just to keep time code. And then once I get back onto my cart, it just jams things from that. So those are very reliable. So I've been using ambient for a long time.
Okay. Now, do you have a particular philosophy about managing time code on set, or do you just kind of let that get dictated by camera department?
What I tend to do when I start a job is I will talk to the post-production department. And I'll say, look, here I am. I'm going to be presenting you dailies on this. What's the frame rate? I'm going to present time code this way. Is this way you want time code? So I get the information from the horse's mouth, so to speak, because sometimes you'll get a very keen camera assistant who wants to tell you this is the way we want to do it. And in actual fact, when they get to post, it's not what post wants at all. So rather than wait for the phone call to say, hey, this is not what we want, I'll talk with them first, get a text sheet from them to say, okay, we want such and such. And then I will go to the camera department on test days and say, look, this is the time code I'm sending you. These are the locket boxes. They will be on. We will jam them first thing in the morning. Well, these ones are continually jammed. We'll change batteries first thing in the morning. If you change frame rate, just leave them. They'll pick up once the frame rate's back again. So I tend to do it that way. And on my monitors, I can see if there's any issues with time code. There'll be a little orange thing in the corner that will say, oh, it's not sync or something like that. So then I can tell one of the team to go check what's happened, if the cameras are off speed, off frame rate, or whatever. So I tend to, I wouldn't say lay down the law, but I go with what post want rather than what the camera department say. Because at the end of the day, it's post who will give me the phone call, not camera department.
Do you have a preference when it comes to, do you prefer a time of day, or do you have an arbitrary number based on what day you're shooting, those type of things?
Again, I'll speak to post about that. Generally, it's time of day. And then, of course, if we're shooting across the night, then I'll flip it 12 hours so that we don't jump that midnight thing. Yeah, so generally time of day, unless I get specific instruction that they want just tape time or something, which I couldn't tell. I certainly haven't done that in the last 5 years of, just tape time. I've not done that, so.
Okay. Yeah, I was on a recent project not too long ago, and I went and the DIT was talking, I was talking to him about what he needed, and then I went and spoke with camera, and I just kind of tried to make sure everybody was on the same page, because like you said, sometimes one person says one thing, one person says another. So.
Exactly. So I have been caught out trying to be helpful to the camera department, and then found out to my horror that neither the DIT nor the camera assistant know these particular cameras that well, and have given me completely nonsense information. So now I don't take what they're saying. I'm happy to help, but at the end of the day, post rules.
That's good information for people to know too.
Yeah, because, what's going to happen once you give in your information? Once we've shot whatever it is we shoot for the day and the DIT has taken the rushes in, all they're doing is copying it across to send it to post. So whatever we do on set, it's better that post know up front. And then if it's not what they want, they'll say, okay, well, this is what we sent in this email. And I always like, as well, at the start of a job, to have post copy in the DIT, so that the DIT also sees what it is that I'm doing. So the conversation's been had in the round. The DIT knows, the first camera assistant knows. So we're all on the same page.
Yes. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the projects you've worked on. You were doing something with the tunnel for Sky Atlantic, and so tell us a little bit about that project.
Okay, the tunnel is based on, I think, a Scandinavian crime drama about, it's a cop show basically. The one that I did was called Vengeance, which was a particularly, what's the best expression to use? Bloodthirsty. Yeah. So it's a serial killer. It was a really good show to work on. Fantastic artist, very sound friendly. My benchmark for shows that I like are artists are sound friendly, and they get what we're trying to do, and they work with us. So that's always my benchmark. You know, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I worked on such and such. And when you ask them how it went, they say it was awful because the director hated sound, the artist wouldn't wear a radio mic, all that sort of stuff. But Tunnel was really good because the artists were super, super helpful with the radio mics and some of the things that the director wanted to do. The director was a very creative person. We had two directors. One rehearsed a lot and one didn't rehearse so much. So you really had to be on the ball with the one that didn't rehearse so much. Once you got on the same page as him, how he thought, you could always just jump ahead and get stuff prepped in advance. But you had to you couldn't sort of set up and step away for a minute. You always had to be around because he might say, oh, well, I don't want to shoot it that way. We're going to shoot this. And so you had to be ready.
Okay. Well, break it down for us a little bit. What is a sound-friendly set for you?
A sound-friendly set? Wow. Okay. The show I'm just on now is called Britannia. The show I was on before that was called Intergalactic. And we shot the majority of that at a purpose-built studio up in Manchester, which is about 3 hours away from here. That was really great because it was properly insulated for sound, or the AC was damped. The car park for crew cars and, you know, ancillary vehicles was a little way away, so you couldn't hear anything. So that was really good. That was really good. Even the hydraulics, because it's a show that's set in space. Even the hydraulics were set in such a way that we didn't have a problem. And the starscape screen, so, you know, the bit that the space cadets look at out the window, even that was set in such a way, the projectors were set in such a way they were way away from the action. So that's a sound-friendly set. The tunnel, coming back to the tunnel, it's called the tunnel because the crimes happen on either side of the Channel Tunnel, so both in the UK and in France. So one of the crimes happened in the actual tunnel itself, which is the Eurotunnel. And so we ended up shooting a sequence in the maintenance tunnel, which is the tunnel that the engineers for the Eurotunnel go into to check lines and stuff like that. Well, of course, production didn't have any chance of getting those trains shut down. You know, we're in the middle between the north side and the south side tunnel. But the way the maintenance tunnel is built, you can't actually see the trains going past. So it was just written in such a way that it explained that dull roar every so often as the trains went past. And the director would stop, and then we would shoot that bit. So it was quite slow going, but because this was the third in the series, they were used to shooting in there.
Now, you also worked on one of my favorite shows, Homeland.
Oh, my God. Yeah, do you know, when I got the call for that, I thought it was a joke. Homeland, like the Homeland, that one with Claire Danes in. I was so excited. I was so excited. So, yeah, I did the sequence with Saul down in Morocco, which was for Israel and the Palestine border. He's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. The director is a lady called Leslie Linker-Glatter. Phenomenal to work with. I would work, if I got a call tomorrow and say, would you like to work with me? I'd say yes before she finished asking me. She was so lovely. So lovely. I would say that it's a tough show because they shoot so fast. They shoot amazingly fast. They've got a lot to do. I mean, obviously the bulk of the show is shot in and around New York and everything. So these bits with Saul, when they got to Morocco, they had a quite tight schedule and they just had to get stuff done. But I've worked in Morocco a lot. The Moroccan crew are phenomenal. That, you know, I had my team that I normally use in Morocco, so it was just, hit the ground running. I didn't even get on any scouts. There was no scouting because I think, as I understand it, because they shoot so regularly in New York, they don't scout. They just know they're going to hear, they're aware of it. And so when I was on board, there was, we're not scouting. We're just going to go straight into it. And I'm like, okay, right then. And as I say, it was just such a lot of fun. It was tough. We had a couple of guys who played heavies, and they had to manhandle this guy. And the guy had just delivered a bit of dialogue, had his mic on. The heavies were two local actors who got really into it, really roughed the guy up. I'm trying to find the actor's lav. It's like, where's that gone? Where's that gone? Where's that gone? Why can't I hear? I've got a boom over it, but I can't hear the lav. I'm like, what the hell's happened to that lav? We cut, and I sent one of my assistants. I said, go check out his lav. His lav is in two pieces down his shirt because the heavies have basically pulled him around so much, they pulled the mic apart. Yeah, so the head is just the capsule is in the shirt. The cable and the pack are somewhere down the back of him somewhere. So that was a bit like, okay, well, we haven't got that track, but we've got it on the boom. Are we happy to go? Yeah, we go. Off we go. Crack on. So yeah, it's good. It's good. We were shooting in Rabat, so we had lots of car sequences. We're shooting in the Medina, which is crazy. Have you ever shot in a Medina?
No.
Okay, so think of the craziest street market you can think of and multiply it by a factor of 27. Crazy. They don't want people standing still unless they're buying. And if you're not buying, please move out the way. Here comes an American film crew chasing Saul around the market. It was hectic. But again, great fun. And these sorts of things, these sorts of jobs are really good because they sharpen you up. Things that work, great. Things that don't work are great lessons for next time so you know what to do next time. One of my lessons for next time is don't try and take your sound card into a Medina. Get that recorder on your back and run. That's it. Because I'd sort of rigged as I normally do for drama with my sound card and all my paraphernalia and a follow card and all that. No, not for that job. Not for that particular day anyway.
Wow. Now, working with Leslie Linka Glatter, there's certain levels of directors that we work with. So how have you found working with a director at her level?
What was wonderful about Leslie is that she knows everybody's job. She knows what everybody has to do. She understands that we all have stuff to do, and she lets us get on with it. And that I really appreciated that because some of the locations were quite challenging for sound, so we needed a minute or two to just get stuff together so that we could make it work. Because bearing in mind, I hadn't been on the scout. So by the time I get to these places, like, okay, so we have this thing, which had I been on the scout, I would have been able to preempt it and say, look, this may be a problem on the day because of XYZ, but because I wasn't on the scout, okay, we're going to have to make this work. We're going to have to think slightly outside the box to make this particular thing work because I wasn't on the scout. We're in a neighborhood that's got quite a lot of kids in. Have we got extra ADs to run out and get these guys to be a little bit quiet? Have we got, just people who went out, didn't think of these things in terms of sound. So by the time we arrived, it's like, didn't know there's going to be an issue. Yeah. But what was good about working with somebody like Leslie is she gets that. She's not flustered. She just knows this is what we need to do to get this. So I thought it was really, I just really enjoyed working with her. And what was also nice is that when you get the sort of jobs that you watch at home and you get to meet the directors who've done Walking Dead, all of these things, and you're just like, wow, this person is just super, super talented. Because it's very strange. Here in Britain, we know a lot of American shows, but apart from the Downton Abbeys, there are the British shows aren't so well known. So even if you do what we call high-end TV here, it's not as well known in the States unless it's something like Downton. So meeting people, the reverse is that when we meet people from the States, invariably they've done what we would class big shows. So you're always impressed by that. Here's this lady, she did those shows. Good for her.
Yes. No, that's true. Even doing, as I was researching for our interview, it's like the tunnel I wasn't familiar with. I wasn't familiar with Britannia or Intergalactic and things like that. So I would love to kind of seek those out and watch some of those.
Okay, so Intergalactic, we just finished shooting that. Lockdown started, so I don't know if they've completed post yet. There's a lot of post to be done because it's set in space. So obviously there's a lot of CGI and VisFX and everything like that because it's set 300 years in the future. So there's quite a lot of stuff to shoot. We went to the same place in Spain that they shoot Westworld, to Valencia. So we went there to shoot some of the off-world exteriors. Sky is one of the main broadcasters here. So Britannia, Intergalactic, they're mostly on Sky, which is like a premium channel here. I'm trying to think of programs that you would have seen in the States. So The Bible was quite a big show in the States. AD was quite big. I think that was on NBC. So yeah, it's when you're speaking about programs that transfer across the States, I don't know that we have that many here, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, unless you're doing feature films, and I've mostly majored on what we call high-end TV, so drama programs rather than feature films necessarily.
Okay. Now, I saw that one of your specialties is covert filming techniques.
Yes. So a good while ago now, we had to do a 5-camera shoot in amongst the public. So what it meant was we weren't able to roll up with the usual caravan of film crew and all of that. And we had to devise ways of miking the artists, having them have earpieces in, having the camera team have earpieces in, so that the director could give the information in amongst the crowd, in amongst the public, or on the metro, because we did sort of do some filming on subways. And so what I had to do was to convert my kit into, do you know those roll-on suitcases that you have in the overhead compartment of a plane? So I basically condensed my equipment down to that. And the artists wore lavs, and they also had a receiver on, which gave them the feed of the director talking to them to direct them. That was one circuit. The other circuit was for the camera operators. So they had a feed of program sound, and they also had a feed of the director. And then the director had a backpack which had in a mixer which had program sound going into it, and then his voice being split off to a couple of transmitters. One transmitter was to the artist's headphones, and the other transmitter was off to the crew headphones. And then there was a switch that he had on his microphone, which meant he switched between the camera department and the actors. So obviously when he was giving information to the camera department, the artist didn't need to hear that and vice versa. So he had that on a backpack. And then we would just descend into a crowded area. The cameras were disguised into different bits and pieces. We'd all just converge. And because people are really busy getting on with their day, they're not really taking any notice of anyone. And everybody was wearing small headphones, like Walkman headphones or whatever you want to call them, earbuds. So the public were completely oblivious to us filming. And it was quite a nice little kit, really. It worked really, really well, apart from one actress who was very, very nervous. And her contact was so loud that people would walk past her wondering who these voices were coming from her head, because she would have that thing turned up so loud, because if she didn't hear the sort of system noise, she thought it wasn't working. So that when she did get an instruction, it basically blasted out the side of her head, because that was the director saying, okay, go now, or turn here, or whatever it was. And so it was quite a challenge to try and get her to turn the thing down just so it wouldn't blow the gag. Because if a member of the public is sort of within 2 feet of her, 3 feet of her, they could hear what the director was saying because her earpiece was so loud.
And what was interesting about that was that I had a chat with production, because hearing is something that I'm really hot on, for our business, we have to look after our ears. And what I didn't want, because I was using Lectrosonics, do you know Lectrosonic IFBs?
Yes.
They are super loud. They're really, really rock solid bits of equipment, but they go very loud. So she'd been complaining that hers didn't work because the director wasn't giving her a lot of cues. He was giving the other actors cues. So because she wasn't hearing anything, she assumed hers wasn't working. And she complained to the producer, my equipment's not as good as everybody else's. So what we did when we were prepping in the morning, I said to my assistant, let's just take the name labels off and give her another pack with her name on. And so we put her lav pack together, her earpiece pack together, dressed her all and everything, sent her out that day. She's, oh, it's working perfectly. It's working perfectly. It was exactly the same as the others. It's just that she'd got it so in her mind that her particular pack wasn't working. It's just, it was something that we spoke about in production, said, look, we do need to talk to her about having it a lot lower, or at least signing a waiver that when she is through with this show, she doesn't try and come back to me and say, my hearing was damaged because of this equipment you gave. Because people will do stuff like that. If they present with problems later on, oh, it must have been that time when I did that gig with those mics that didn't work, Yeah, I've done a few of those, where you've been working in areas that are more documentary things, really, where you're working with crew and in locations that can be dangerous, in neighborhoods that don't normally want film crews in. So you would set things up in a way that the reporter or whoever can go in, but you don't need to be that close to them. So I suppose that's where the covert shooting has come in. And I also shot in South Africa, down in Soweto. And again, you had to use, I wouldn't say covert necessarily, but discrete methods, because it just wasn't an area at that time that was friendly to film crews just rolling up and pitching out of a truck and setting everything up. So you had to be a bit more discreet about how you got your equipment out. It didn't necessarily pop out of a truck with a big fluffy boom or anything like that. Everybody was wired before they got out, and then you just hung back and let them get on with it.
I love that. Now, this is a kit you kind of put together yourself, or is that something you purchased? I mean, IFB is something we commonly use, but with all the switches between the two?
Basically, with the drama one, what I did is I talked to an engineer friend of mine, because what I would say is when I started, my mentor gave me a really great piece of advice. He said, you can be either engineering or operational. So what that meant was I could either know how to build recording devices or I could know how to use them. And because he said, basically, there will always be somebody who knows how to build them. You have to decide whether you want to use one or not. So that was what I majored on. So obviously I know first line maintenance. If it's not working, I can go through a sort of linear checklist of, is it switched on? Are the batteries good? That sort of stuff. But coming to strip something apart to fix it, that was never my specialty. So coming to build this kit, I sat down with a very good friend of mine and said, look, here are the functions I want. I want the director to be able to speak to the crew on a discrete circuit. I want him to be able to talk to artists on a discrete circuit. I want another circuit which is open talk back so that the director speaks to everyone at the same time. So that needs to be switchable. So these are the things I want. Here's what I've got to do with. I've got a mini mixer. I've got these transmitters. Let's build something that can go in a backpack, because this system exists in TV scanners all over the world. Production talkback is a standard thing all over the world with those circuits. But having something that is custom made that can go into a gym bag effectively, and you don't look like you're walking around with a load of production talkback. And also the power involved has got to be 50 milliwatts. It can't be more than that. Of course, TV production talkback, you can have it as powerful as you like, but because somebody's wearing it, you can't really give them that much power. So I spoke with a friend of mine and we got our pens and papers out and started designing something. And it worked super well. It worked really, really well. I was super pleased with that because it was the way that the cues are given, the director will look around, especially in this particular show, the director would look around and see what the public were doing at any given moment, and then he'd give the cue. So it was really important that it worked first time, every time. We didn't get like, okay, let's go again. We didn't quite get that, you know? And also that particular director was, shall I say, artistic. Didn't have a lot of patience for the technology, whether it be camera or sound. You know, I don't know if you've worked with guys like that.
Yes, I think we all have.
You just have to, it just has to work because they don't want to know. I don't do so much of that now because, as I say, it's scripted drama now and everybody's in shot and it's all, you know, big people TV.
Yes. Well, how did you get started in production sound?
I was originally a researcher for a film company, and that was late 80s, early 90s. And I was always interested in sound, but because of the background that I came from, there wasn't a traditional route in for me, if you like, because I didn't go to film school per se from the outset. I went to film school after I decided to change career. And I used to work with the contributors, bring them to set, make sure they were happy, you know, liaise with the director and producer and all that lot. And I saw the sound mixer with all the kit, and I just started to talk to him and ask him what mics he was using, why he was using them. And it was interesting because it was the first crew member that had taken the time to explain this stuff to me. Because prior to that, you know, the crew would show up and they were all Mr. Terribly Important and they didn't have any time to talk to anyone. You know, they just did what they were doing and off they went. And so it was a bit of a nervous thing for me to approach him and say, can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing? And he's, you know, he was incredible. And said, oh, you know, I'm doing this and I use these mics to do that. And we're going to be doing this. You know, we've got a choir that we're going to be recording. So I'm going to be using these mics. And it was absolutely amazing. And I got back to the office and I said to my boss, you know, I'd really like to do sound. And Michael, they loved so much. They thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. It was just, and I went home and I thought, it sort of upset me, to be honest, because it was perceived as such a ridiculous thing to do, such a ridiculous thing to want to do. So I started to write to different colleges and see if I could get a place on the courses, and there weren't really any courses for women at that time at all. And the courses that were available were very much geared along engineering, which I knew I didn't want to do engineering. I was very much more keen to do location recording rather than fixing recording equipment. And I applied to National Film School and got into National Film School in location recording. And my career started from there, really. I met up with two instructors who were both working sound recordists. One worked in features and one worked in documentaries. And they basically took me under their wing, trained me that way. And it was the best thing ever. I think I learned more on the go than in the class, because I felt I'm the sort of person who learns. If you show it to me, it sticks. You know, if you say, okay, do this, do this, do this, I get that. If somebody writes it down 7 times, I don't retain it, I don't think. I don't know. Some people learn like that, but that's the way that I learned, and that's the way I started.
Okay. So these guys were mentors along the way?
Very much so, very much so. Yeah.
You want to do a little shout out to your mentors there?
Well, one of them sadly has now passed. He was a Canadian chap called Christian Wangler. He was a features mixer, and the other chap is a guy called Albert Bailey, who's now in his mid-70s, but we had an appreciation for him last December. I mean, these guys were really tough. Compared to the mixers of today, these guys took no prisoners. Every bit of kit had to be just so. Every microphone cable had to be wrapped just so. Every battery had to be charged in just this order. And I still use that method till today because it works. All the sound kit all in one place. Don't have it scattered all over the set. They were just, strict is the wrong word, thorough, I would say, because they understood that certainly in features in that time, the sound department were really the poor cousins of the film industry. And if there was going to be any shouting on the set, it usually was directed at the sound department for whatever reason. So, their logic was you better have your stuff together because saddle up, it's going to be rough, there's going to be turbulence. But, they were really great tutors, really great tutors.
Well, do you remember the very first time you were a production sound mixer on set?
That's a good question. What would that be? Because I did a lot of little shorts and vanity pieces for people. That was between booming my day job, and then people say, oh, I've written a little script. Do you want to come and do the sound for me? So I suppose that would be 89, 90, somewhere around there. My first grown-up thing would be 93. My first big TV thing would be 93. And I'm still mixing now. So how long is that? That's a while, isn't it? That's a minute or two. My work is pretty much domestic. As I say, I have done some international stuff, but generally speaking, it's been British based. I absolutely love it and still love it now. I don't know that I would do anything else, really.
Well, when you're assembling a sound team, what do you look for when it comes to a boom op and a sound utility when you're considering working with somebody new?
Okay. So when I'm looking on their resume, I'm not looking at necessarily what they worked on. I'm looking at who they've worked with, because believe it or not, this industry is still about who you know. It just is. It's just a fact. So if they have worked with people I know, then I will call that person and say, look, I'm thinking of using so-and-so. How are they? Whatever. If I haven't worked with anybody that they've worked with, after speaking to them, I'm kind of gauging if they've got good people skills. Because the technical skills are one thing, but you've got to really, really have good people skills, because at the end of the day, once we're on set and I'm behind my cart mixing and the first is out on the boom, I'll need somebody who is not face down in their phone. If they see people talking, they've got to have a personality to get people to be quiet without upsetting them. If I need something, if the director changes the scene, we need somebody laughed quickly, I need that person to be on the ball. So I think the thing that I look for, certainly in a utility person, somebody who is not only technically savvy, but has good people skills are number one, because our job is we have to collaborate with every department. And if I have somebody who's really brilliant technically, but manages to upset costume, props, lighting, vis effects, we're in a world of pain, because anything that we need to do to get things turned down, turned off, moved, if that person goes over and says, shut that down, turn that off, it's not going to work. So what I'm looking for is, when I speak to people, I am looking for that common sense attitude and the approach that, we're all in a team together. It's not team sound above everybody else. But at the same time, you're not the sort of person that if I say, that guy's over there's talking, can you get them to be quiet? Don't stand there staring at me. Go over and get them quiet. Because I have had people who on the face of it seem super good, but as soon as they come onto set, they feel so in awe of whatever. They're unable to perform because, oh no, I don't want to upset them. So people skills, technical skills, of course, but people skills are up there as well.
Now, when you're talking with them, say for the first time or getting to know them, are there any red flags that you're like, ooh, no, I don't think this is going to work out?
I think sometimes they forget how small the industry is. So because I've been in the industry such a long time, there's a fairly high probability I will know the people you've worked with before. So you may not know I know them. So if I'm talking to you about a potential job and what you're going to be doing now is slating my opposite number or slating somebody I've worked with or saying they didn't do it the proper way, big red flag, because what that's saying is if you really want to be a mixer and you're doing this job because you haven't managed to get a mixer's job yet, and the mixers you worked with you don't rate, that's a big red flag. Another one is the idea that timekeeping is not really a thing that they do. So, they may be late sometimes. Sorry. Things happen in life, and it may be that something unavoidable happens. We get that. But when you've just been out on the town or you've been out with the guys and you wake up in the wrong flat and you've got to scuttle back to your place and then show up on location, don't have any time for that. But you get one go. And if I find out that's what you're on, I tell you, thanks very much. You got to go. So those are the things. I think with speaking to people, I get a fairly good idea by just letting them talk and listening to how they talk to me. I get a fairly good idea. Another red flag that I discovered, sometimes to my dismay after the event, is that I will hire somebody who's on the face of it really keen. And what they will then do is they become protective of me because they're used to working with sound guys. So they're now working with me and they think that they have to defend me from the rest of the crew. No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. It's not a good thing to do. I had that once, and it was quite a strange experience because at first I couldn't understand why the crew were reacting to me in the way they were reacting to me. And then I left the boom mic live, and I heard him interacting with the team. And I was really embarrassed because I would never speak to crew like that. But he thought it was okay to do so because he was talking on my behalf. Nah, don't do that. Rudeness. Rude to anybody. I can't bear. There's no need.
Okay. Now, as a woman of color, have you had any particular challenges working in the film and television industry?
That's always a weird question for me, for the simple reason that I've always thought in order for me to answer that, I would have had to be the other and done the same thing and found it easy, and then being me found it difficult. So I've never been able to directly say, okay, today it's been a crap day because I'm me, and tomorrow when I'm a blonde me, it's going to be better.
That's a good way to answer it.
When I first started, I got that question a lot because with people seeing me, oh yeah, you're a black woman. So therefore, I say to my team, honestly, it doesn't suck to be me. I just get on with what I'm doing. At this stage of my career, the people that hire me know who I am. They know what I am. So there's no surprise. I would say back when I first started, people were surprised to see me show up. So I had things like on Scouts, I would be mistaken for the director's nanny or the director's assistant or, costume, makeup, any other thing other than sound. It would be, oh, well, this woman's walking around with us. The sound guy's going to be here soon. So they would point out some place that might have some sort of sound issue, and I'd just be about to speak, and they'd be looking over my shoulder to see, well, where's the sound guy? Why isn't the sound guy here yet? And I'd point, I am the sound guy. That's it, really. More that I don't look like a sound guy, I think. I wouldn't say I've got a whole load of war stories necessarily about, this day this happened or this day this happened. Not really. As I say, when I first started, I got that question quite a lot, and it just struck me as a kind of odd question in the sense that I can't tell you what it's like to be other than me because I've only ever been this. I think it's more that people are, now, the people I work for a lot of the same clients over and over again. They will get me back, which is good. So I think whenever I work with people who haven't worked with me before, there is, I don't want to say a fear of the unknown, because the budgets I work on, it's got to be said that I'm not going to get $4 million shows if I can't do what I'm doing. So those people will come on and they'll be like, oh, this is a woman, it's a black woman. And within a day or so, that novelty's worn off because I am doing my job, they're doing a job. Whatever I'm asking for, another mixer would be asking for the same thing. Can we move the Jenny a little bit further down the road? Can we get some mats for that thing? It's more about novelty than otherness, if you like, now. I would say that if there's anything at all, I think once people work with me, they're fine. It's the initial meeting. If they've never worked with me before, it's the initial meeting. Because also my name doesn't sound terribly urban, for want of a better expression. So it's the initial, once they've met me and once they start talking about their project, that all of that falls away because, oh, okay, she knows what she's talking about. If I'm completely honest, Michael, it's their thing. It's not my thing because I'm here to do sound. And once I've got my headphones on, you can't see what color they are. I found it working for American crews, if anything, easier in the sense that if you can do the job, there's no kind of, ooh, you're a lady or you're a woman. In Britain, when I first started, there was more of that, but not now.
Okay. All right. Well, one of our favorite questions that we always ask is, what was your worst on-set experience?
On the show that we spoke about the other day, that we watched together, Homeland, saw Mandy Patinkin's got a very, very hairy chest, really hairy chest, and the world's biggest beard. And so he was doing this sequence. We put lav on and everything like this. And we had a very wide shot that we couldn't get a boom in and we couldn't plant anything because it was a blank table. So there was nowhere to put plant, nowhere at all. And it's supposed to be an interview room. And so he's bending his head forward. So the beard is rubbing on the lav. So we ask if we can adjust it. So we try to adjust it down. And then he folds his shoulders over. And he has a vest on under the shirt. So the lav is in between the shirt and the vest. And so because of the way he's crouching, the hairs of his body are now rubbing on the T-shirt. So all I had was scratch. And the director's looking at me and I was like, he's got hairy, he's got beard. But as soon as we go in for coverage, I can get him on the boom and you won't hear that. But we want to use this. I said, well, I don't know what we can do because he's got the biggest beard ever. And, because he was doing this particular scene where he's folded over onto himself, like talking into his chest. Yeah, it was perfectly on mic, but so was the scratching of the beard. And I sat there and I was just cringing. Producer came over to me and said, I can hear that scratching. And I said, yes, so can I. I said, and so I was showing him on the monitor what was causing it. I said, well, what would you like me to do here? I don't quite know. There isn't anything in physics I can do about a beard scratching the shirt with the lav underneath it. And when he puts his head up, it's the hair on his chest that's scratching it. So I don't know what you would like. So that stands out in my mind as one of my least favorite things. As soon as we went in for coverage, it was perfect. We just didn't use the lav then because it just was not in that particular moment very good. But that's one thing that springs to mind. Lavs are good when they're great, and when they're bad, they're terrible.
Speaking of miking up talent, wiring talent, do you have any expendables or techniques that you like to use when you're wiring talent on set?
I don't wire talent on set now. My first AS does that. And as long as it's clean and nice, I'm happy. So once I've sat down, I don't interfere. So if we've got X amount of people to get wired, I leave that with my team. I pull the fader up as long as it's clean and as long as it's on axis, I'm happy. I won't say, can we use X, Y, or Z? I don't do that now.
So you kind of leave that in their hands and trust that what they're doing is correct. And they're going to hear it rubbing too. So they're going to...
Absolutely. I remember when I was booming that it would irritate me intensely if my mixer came on the floor because as far as I'm concerned, I'm their eyes and ears, and it's for me to make sure everything is on point. The boom is in the right place. The lavs are in the right place. If we've got plants, that's on me. Their job is to mix or listen to everything. And if they came on and started saying, oh, can you do it this way? It was irritating. So I thought once I sat down, that would be something I wouldn't do. The floor is for them. They're going to take care of that. And as long as I've got a clean signal coming back to me, or if they need to troubleshoot, they're on it pretty quickly. They can hear what I'm hearing and get it taken care of. Some artists are terrible. You lav them up and they step off set for a minute to have a phone call and they find the off switch and turn the thing off. So it's good to have teams on board who, certainly the team I've got now are very, very on that. And we'll take care of that.
If you could go back to the beginning of your career in sound, what would you do differently if you could change something?
Well, the thing is, that's a really good question. And the thing is, the sound industry has changed beyond all recognition. Because certainly I used to do a lot of documentaries and I used to haul huge amounts of weight of equipment to do this stuff. And I loved it, but it was quite hard work with all the gear. So if I could go back now, I'd probably stick to booming. Maybe go documentaries. Maybe. Yeah, I think I would. Until I decided to start mixing. I think I'd stick to booming.
That's good. Now, besides the gear, being heavier and stuff, how has the business really changed since you started?
Oh, wow. Well, the capabilities of the recording equipment have changed exponentially. I mean, now we have things that run 32 channels as standard. It's not a special bit of kit, that's just what that kit does. And you've got Dante now, that whole arena of Dante now in terms of how many things you can be recording, digital audio workstations. That's changed a lot compared to the old DAT machines that we started with, the Nagras, the reel-to-reels. I had a digital Nagra called a Nagra V, I think it was called. We could record 4 tracks plus timecode. That was revolutionary when it first came out. I mean, it wasn't a location machine, to be honest, but it sounded beautiful. But from then to now, things have changed so much. And I think very much for the better. I think also the move that now that everybody has to be on a radio, on a lav. When I first started, that wasn't the case. It was, you put one out, you put one on if need be. It wasn't the required thing. Now it's completely, if you've got 6 people, 6 lavs, unless they're not talking, of course. That's the big change I see now.
Okay. A lot of our listeners are maybe just getting started in the industry. So what kind of advice would you give them if they're wanting to go into production sound?
My first bit of advice to them, don't take it personally. Meaning that a lot of the time people think about sound as the last thing ever. So they're going to spend all their money on the state-of-the-art camera and the talent and all of this and all of that. And they want you to show up with all your stuff and give it for free. So you've got to understand that they're not doing it because it's you. They're doing it because they think somehow or other that's what sound is about. So you've got to value your craft and try not to undercut yourself. Yes, there will be things that you want to do and you'll do as a favor for a friend, but at the same time, try to remember this is a craft, not a hobby. And so think of it like that. It's not something that, kit is not cheap. So you've got to be able to make a living at it. And if you find that you're not making a living at it, ask, why not? The don't take it personally is more for people who are booming, who are more in scripted drama, because a lot of the times, whenever shots are messed up, there's soft focus or something like that, they usually say boom and shot. Or they will, oh yeah, I thought I saw a boom shadow. And people get on their hind legs super quickly. No, it wasn't me. Sometimes it's just a ruse they use because they didn't like the performance, but they don't want to upset the talent by saying, oh, can you do something slightly different? So they will turn to the easiest target, which is us lot, and say, oh, I think I saw did I see the pack? Could I see the pack on that costume? So those sort of things, don't take them personally. That's just the game.
The problem is then we're trying to fix the pack, or we're trying to figure out, where did the shadow come from? What?
Exactly. So when obviously, we had on a show I did, some years ago, we had a first assistant who, he stepped up and it was his first big job as a focus puller. And Michael, he was dreadful. He was absolutely awful. And every take was soft. But he wouldn't admit that it was soft and say, I'm sorry, let me go again. So the camera team sort of closed ranks around him and would say to the director, oh, sorry, we have to go again because we thought we saw a boom shadow. Then the next time was, the boom just dipped in top of frame. But what they do would pan up when they realize that the person walked through the focus, they would pan up to catch the boom and say, okay, that boom was in. And so we had 6 or 7 takes, none of them sharp. And eventually I called my team on the comms. I said, guys, step away. And I had 2 boom ups in the rooms. I said, step away. And everybody was on lavs anyway. And we turned over and it was still soft. And so the operator said, oh yeah, we're going to have to go again because there was a boom shadow. I said, that's going to be really tricky because there are no booms in the room. So they were, and the first said, yeah, nope, there's no booms in here, guys. You're going to have to sort this out because it's not sound this time. That's why I say don't take it personally, because there will be times when we are the scapegoats.
Yeah, that's good to know because people get upset, especially when you feel like you were doing a good job.
Exactly. I will talk to my team and say, look, step away, guys, step away, because at the end of the day, what we're doing, we might be making a show about an emergency, but it's not an emergency. So my motto is nobody shot at me today, so that's pretty good.
That is true. Well, Judi, it's been great talking with you today. And as we kind of start to wrap things up, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out and learn more about you or maybe inquire about some of the movies you've done?
Well, at the moment, I'm pretty slow on the socials, but I'm on Insta and I'm on Facebook. I am currently having a web page built. So that's going to be coming online within the next couple of weeks, I'm told. So that'll be mostly, certainly the way that you got in touch with me as well on Facebook is the way to reach out. I have been quite slow in getting on board with the socials, and my team say you really ought to have this, and this. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I'll get around to it. And I never do. But in this time that we haven't been shooting so much, it's one of the things that I've been actively pursuing to get completed. But yeah, it's been great talking to you. I hope what I've said makes some kind of sense.
Oh, it does. Yeah, this is great. I know, a lot of times, especially when people are busy and their schedules are zipping along, it's really hard to connect with people. But there was a lady, and I don't know what the connection is, but Grace Brown.
Yes.
And she was the one that originally reached out and thought that you would be a good choice to be on the show. So what's your connection with Grace?
I won an award last year. And there was a lot of publicity about it. And Grace saw the publicity and reached out because she didn't know. She's just started fairly recently in the career. And she reached out to me and I was chatting with her and she was really like, wow, I didn't know there was another Black woman doing sound. Wow. And I'm more than happy to talk to people. I've never got the idea that I'm too important to speak to people. When I started, it wasn't the done thing to talk to mixers. It wasn't a done thing to reach out to them. They were much too grand, but I don't believe in that. And, if people do reach out and want to chat, I'm more than happy. Obviously, if I'm shooting, it might not be the same time, but I will certainly reply. And that's basically where it came from. She said, oh, this guy does this podcast. But no, it's been really good. I've enjoyed it. I'm learning. What's useful about this for me is that a lot of us mixers, our sound card is our safety blanket. We get behind that and we stay there. And this is quite a good way of meeting people and talking to more people. And I'm getting better at it, I think.
And that's been the big thing. People have really shown so much interest because we don't always get a chance to talk with other sound people and talk to them about techniques and challenges that they're facing on set. So it's really been very well received.
For sure. I think one of the other things I would say to people who are starting out in the industry, be prepared. Check your kit. Your kit is your lifeline. Check your kit. I can't stress it enough. I've seen second unit people turn up with a bag of rubbish and you're like, this is what you're making a living with? People notice this. So check your kit. When I get onto set, once it comes off my truck and gets on set, I switch on. I want to know every channel's working, all my mics are ready to go. I don't want to be in the situation where I'm thinking, oh, did I check that channel that was a bit iffy? I hate that. I've worked when I was a boom up, I worked with mixers like that they had everything held together with gum, pretty much. Gum and gaffer tape. No, I couldn't. I'd hate that.
All right. Well, I just want to say thanks to Judi Lee-Headman for being on the show today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
And I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening. If you have questions or would like us to discuss a particular topic, email us at locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. We're available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.